7:12 p.m. Tuesday. Fluorescent light humming, floor scrubbed to a dull shine, room 312 at the end of a too long corridor. The air tasted like metal and lemon, the kind of clean that burns the back of your throat. I clutched my purse like a shield and ran. A 66-year-old woman sprinting in sensible shoes, heart knocking hard enough to register on the monitors I passed. "Ma'am, slow down," a security guard called, palm raised, tone that special flavor of polite they use on grandmothers and nuisances. I didn't slow. They can ticket my dignity later. My son needed me now. Robert, 42, brilliant, stubborn, still chewing his ice like a boy. The phone call had said, emergency admission, and my kitchen timer was still wailing for a pot I'd forgotten to turn off. I left the soup on the flame and my fear on speaker. I took 2 buses and 1 prayer. At my age, I don't shout. I keep receipts, I whispered to my own pulse, as if evidence could steady an old woman's legs. Room numbers crawled past, 306, 308, 310, each plaque a small refusal, until the 3 and the 1 and the 2 finally lined up like mercy. I reached for the handle. That's when a hand, cool, firm, found my forearm and pulled me sideways into the shadow of a half-open supply door. "Hide and wait," a woman murmured against my ear. I smelled hospital soap on her skin and something like peppermint tea on her breath. The badge on her scrub top flashed when she moved. Nurse. Mid-40s, steady eyes, hair pulled back like a decision. Not one of those voices that asks, the kind that knows. "Please, my son." I tried to step past. "Trust me," she said, low. "If you want him to live, you do not go in there yet." My mouth closed because of the way her pupils held me, like she'd already seen the ending and was trying to wedge me onto the right page. She eased me behind the door, into that thin wedge of darkness where mops and oxygen tanks live, and pressed a finger to her lips. The hall light cut a silver blade across the floor. Somewhere a monitor chimed twice, polite, then impatient. I listened. That's what women my age learn to do. We listen more than we're heard. Through the crack, I saw the door to 312. I saw a pair of heels stop there, pale leather, expensive, silly for a hospital. I saw a man's briefcase brush his pant leg as he adjusted his tie. I didn't see faces. Sometimes the Lord plays merciful with the details. "She's on the way, but she'll take a while," the woman in the heels said, voice honeyed and bored at once. "We have time." I knew that voice. I'd spent 7 years buttering it with kindness. It never returned. They called me simple. Simple doesn't mean blind. It means I observe, and I annotate. Something loosened from the nurse's hand on my arm. Not pressure, permission. "Breathe," she whispered. "Memorize. You'll need every word." My lungs obeyed like they used to obey the choir director. In through the nose, hold, let it down slow so the note doesn't tremble. My eyes traced the small facts that never lie. The scuff on the man's heel, the crisp folder he tucked under his arm, the tiny run in her stocking near the ankle, proof of haste beneath the costume of poise. "Repeat it back," the nurse mouthed, teacher quiet. "Hide and wait," I mouthed. "And watch," she mouthed. So I watched. Watched the heels tilt toward the door. Watched the briefcase tilt open. Watched the woman tilt her head, listening for footsteps that didn't come. The corridor held its breath with me. Somewhere, a vending machine coughed out a can. The clock above 3111 clicked its dull little heartbeat. The man spoke then, careful consonants that smelled like retainer fees. "Once he's unavailable, we initiate transfers. You sign here, here, and here." I didn't feel my knees go weak. I felt them lock. My son was 10 again, learning to ride his bike without training wheels. I was behind him, hands out, ready to catch. Some instincts never retire. I learned to choose myself without apology, I tell people now. But that night, I chose something older. I chose to stand still, to gather, to make the first entry in a file I didn't know I'd be keeping by morning. The nurse's hand left my arm. "Not yet," she breathed. "Wait for the line you can't unhear." On the other side of the door to my son's room, a key clicked. A voice, her voice, lowered to a whisper I felt in my teeth. "That IV," she said. No one suspects a thing. Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people. Hospitals teach you a new clock. Not the kind that hangs above room 3111, clicking its tired seconds. The other clock, the one inside your ribs that counts down what a doctor calls a critical window. 48 hours. That's what they like to say when they mean, if mercy is coming, it will knock soon. A resident in a white coat told me that in the bland voice they save for weather reports and dying men. The next 48 hours are critical. He blinked down at the chart. If he wakes, we'll know more. If he wakes. He said it like a comma, not a cliff. I nodded like a woman grateful for updates and swallowed the small stone that sentence planted in my throat. The nurse, the one who'd pulled me into shadow, walked me to a bench near a Coke machine that kept swallowing quarters and cursing them back. She didn't sit. She looked at me the way you look at a locked door you plan to open anyway. You can go in soon, she said. Not yet. Tell me your name, I said, because names are tethers when the earth leans. Letty, she said, short for Letitia. I repeated it. Letty, the syllable landing soft, like a hand to steady a fall. She studied the corridor, the elevators, the half-closed blinds across from us. She's smart, Letty said without decoration. Smart gets sloppy when it thinks it's already won. I thought of the heels at 312, the briefcase, the folder that had snapped like a jaw. Money makes people forget that paper is not stone. Paper burns, paper changes hands, paper lies. But it also remembers the pressure of a pen. I keep receipts. My son's wife emerged then, smoothing that cream dress, face arranged like a funeral flower. Oh, Doris, she breathed, tasting my name as if it were something she might spit later. She reached for my hands. He's resting. Poor thing. The cardiologist says stress. I told him to slow down. Didn't I always tell him? I watched her mouth shape the story she wanted printed on our hearts. I let her press it like a stamp. You did, I said kindly. You always did. Her eyes shone with an almost tear. You shouldn't exhaust yourself. Go home and rest. I'll call you if anything changes. There it was, the small rejection that pretends to be care. Go home, old woman. Outsiders wait in kitchens. I smiled the way a closed book smiles. I'll stay. A flicker. Annoyance crossed her face like a cloud. Then the sun came out again. Polite, bright, false. Of course, I just meant comfort. The elevators chimed. The man with the briefcase cleared his throat at the far end of the hall as if he were practicing sincerity. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. Predators feel each other by air pressure. 48 hours, I said lightly, trying the words on her to see how they fit. They matter, don't they? She tilted her head. Who told you that? The tone was curious, but her shoulders tightened a thread. The resident, I lied easily. He was very careful. Careful is good, she said, and the skin at the edge of her smile went white where it held. Careful keeps us from mistakes. Over her shoulder, Letty's gaze found mine. The briefest nod. Hold position. She drifted toward the nurse's station, speaking to no one, collecting everyone. I could feel her building something invisible. Timestamps, observations, a lattice only the patient see. Women like us weave nets in daylight and call them prayer. In the room, my son lay gray and tethered, a child and a stranger at once. I touched his wrist and counted under my breath the way I did when he was 6 and feverish, sleeping hot on my chest. 1, 2, 3. Evidence can be a number 2. His pulse beat back, thinner than I wanted, but present. Here, here, here. She stood on the other side of the bed, arranging concern into photogenic angles. He hates hospitals, she said softly. Always has. Do you remember, Doris, when he broke his collarbone that summer? He cried all the way to the ER. She laughed, small and sweet. Such a baby. I remembered. I also remembered that I carried him and that he stopped crying when he could hear my heart. I did not offer that memory to her. I set it down on the shelf where I keep my better weapons. The briefcase man hovered in the doorway, then retreated. Timing is the art in crimes like these. She smoothed my son's hair. I'll run home later and grab his things, she said. Laptop, Phone, some documents we need to sign regarding his leave. She glanced at me as if I were a wall to measure. Hospitals love paperwork. So do I said, and she missed it because she was already rehearsing the next line. Lady reappeared, professional smile in place, a chart in her hand that might as well have been a warrant. Mrs. Salazar, she said to the woman who uses my name like a doormat, we'll need you to step out while we adjust medications. Then to me, so gently you could mistake it for nothing, ma'am, could you come with me to sign the family contact form? It won't take a minute. In the tiny conference room, door shut, the hum of the vent loud as a verdict, Letty slid a clipboard toward me. The top sheet was real. The second wasn't. Beneath it was a lined page and a pen that wrote in the kind of dark ink that photographs well. Write what you heard, she said. Exact words if you can. Times if you remember. I'll sign that I witnessed your statement at, she checked the clock, 7:31 p.m. My hand didn't shake. Not this hand. I wrote the sentence that had entered me like a blade, that IV. No one suspects a thing. Then I wrote the other, plain, practical, poisonous. Once he's unavailable, we initiate transfers. Letty signed, date, time, her license number printed neat. We're not ready to go to war, she said, voice steady, but we are done being unarmed. I tucked the carbon copy into my purse behind a grocery receipt and the photo of Robert at 9, gap-toothed, popping a wheelie for the camera. The conference room light flickered once and settled. Somewhere down the hall, a printer whirred to life. Mrs. Salazar, a voice called through the door, the briefcase man, suddenly courteous. I have the forms when you're free. Letty met my eyes, calm and sharp as a scalpel. Give him 5 minutes, she whispered. Then meet him in the family lounge. I'll have something by then he does not know we have. What? She reached into her pocket and showed me a small, square object, black as a secret. A recorder, she said, and a full battery. I opened the door to go play dumb. And that's when I felt it. The IV pole on the other side of 312 shift ever so slightly. Someone's hand where no hand should be. The sound was so small I almost missed it. Metal against metal, the faint rattle of a hook brushing a pole. But when you've lived long enough, you learn to listen to what other people ignore. The devil doesn't always roar. Sometimes he rearranges an IV line. I stepped back into the hallway, spine straight, pulse steady enough to hide. The light above room 312 flickered again, casting her silhouette against the half-closed curtain. My daughter-in-law, perfect posture, calm hands. Too calm. She shouldn't have been touching that IV bag. The nurses had stepped away less than a minute ago. She was alone. Alone with him. Excuse me, I said softly from the doorway, like a woman who doesn't yet know she's interrupting murder. She turned. Her face bloomed into that soft, rehearsed sorrow. Oh, Doris, you startled me. The nurse said I could adjust the blanket. He looked cold. Her fingers still rested on the plastic tube. Not the blanket, not even close. I see, I murmured, stepping inside. My son's chest rose and fell in shallow tides. The monitor beeped an uneven lullaby. I had to grip the rail to keep from trembling. There's a moment, right before the truth fully enters you, when your mind tries to negotiate with it. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe she's helping. But truth doesn't bargain. It sits down in your chest and makes itself at home. I caught a glint in her hand, something metallic, small, a syringe cap. She slipped it into her pocket with the ease of someone practiced in erasing evidence. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull the line from his arm, drag her by the wrist, call security, burn the world down. But I remembered Letty's voice. Wait for the line you can't unhear. And here it was, unfolding in front of me. I was going to get coffee, she said, smoothing her dress. Would you like something, Doris? Maybe tea? No, I said, smiling the way women smile when they've decided not to die quietly. I'll stay with him. You go ahead. She hesitated. Predators hate leaving their prey unattended, but she couldn't refuse without suspicion. So she adjusted her purse, whispered, I won't be long, and clicked away on those thin, deceitful heels. As soon as she disappeared around the corner, I moved. The IV bag was half full, the liquid clear, too clear. I pressed my hand against the tube. Cold. And then the smell. Faint. Chemical. Wrong. I'd worked 30 years in a clinic before retiring. I know the difference between saline and sabotage. Letty appeared at my side, as if summoned by fear itself. "You saw her?" she asked under her breath. "She touched it," I said. "Something's wrong with the line." Without another word, she gloved up and unclipped the bag. Her face darkened as she held it up to the light. "There's residue at the neck," she whispered. "That shouldn't be there." "What does it mean?" "It means your instincts are right. It means he's being poisoned." The words landed like glass breaking inside me. All the years of trust, of family dinners, of holidays where I bought her gifts she never used, every memory turned acidic in a single heartbeat. "She's killing him," I whispered. Letty nodded once. "And now we can prove it." She pulled a small evidence pouch from her pocket, she'd come prepared, and sealed the IV bag inside. Then she glanced toward the door. "The doctor's running the sample now. We'll know soon." I sank into the chair by my son's bed. His face was pale, his lips cracked. I touched his hand, the same hand that used to clutch mine crossing the street. "Hold on," I whispered. "Please, just hold on." Letty placed her hand on my shoulder. "We're not done yet, Mrs. Salazar. I'm going to keep her away from him, but you have to act normal. She can't know we know." Normal. The word felt foreign. How do you play normal when you've just met evil and it wears your family's last name? I nodded anyway. "She'll come back soon," I said, "and I'll be ready." Letty looked at me, not with pity, but with respect. "Good, because we're recording everything now." When she left, I sat in the half-light, listening to the slow, stubborn rhythm of my son's heartbeat. The hallway hummed with machines and quiet lies. Somewhere beyond that wall, my daughter-in-law was stirring sugar into her coffee, rehearsing the next line of her alibi. And I was writing my own, because I don't scream anymore. I document. The nurse's footsteps faded down the corridor, leaving behind the hum of monitors and the low hum of my anger. I stayed by Robert's bedside, holding the cold edge of the truth like a relic. The IV bag was gone now, sealed, labeled, evidence. But its ghost lingered in the air, that faint metallic scent, that sterile chill that clings to everything the devil touches. A soft knock broke the silence. She was back. Scarlet. Her perfume entered before she did. Expensive, floral, too alive for a woman with a dying husband. She smiled like someone walking into a play she'd already rehearsed. "He looks a little better, doesn't he?" she said, setting her coffee cup on the tray. I nodded. I'd learned from years of motherhood that silence says more than any argument. She brushed his hair back with slow, performative tenderness. "I asked the doctor if we could increase his dosage. He said they're still adjusting things. So frustrating, isn't it? All this waiting." Dosage. The word hung heavy between us. I wanted to ask, "What dosage, Scarlett? The legal one or the one you pour into his veins when no one's watching?" But I didn't. Not yet. "I brought his phone," she added, pulling it from her bag, "in case he wakes up. He always hates being disconnected." I glanced at the bag. Leather. Large enough for a wallet, a makeup pouch, and pills. "Mind if I check his messages for him?" I asked, pretending to reach for the phone. Her hand darted out too fast. No, I'll handle it. Privacy, you know. He wouldn't like that." And there it was. The tiny crack in her mask. People who lie always protect the wrong things. I smiled, slow and kind. "Of course, dear. I suppose he trusts you with everything." Her face softened again, pride blooming where fear had flickered. "He does," she said. "Completely." "Good," I whispered. "Trust is everything." She didn't hear the undertone. Monsters rarely do. Well, that night, I didn't go home. I told the nurses I couldn't leave, that I'd sleep in the chair. Letty approved it with a quiet nod. "She'll try again," she whispered. "Let her think you're harmless." I wasn't harmless. I was taking notes. At 11:43 p.m., the hallway lights dimmed to half brightness. I watched through heavy eyelids as Scarlett slipped back in. She thought I was asleep. Her reflection flickered on the glass of a monitor screen. She moved like smoke, silent, deliberate. She opened her bag, pulled out a small amber bottle, and tipped a few grains of powder into a paper napkin. Then, calm as breath, she folded the napkin and walked to the IV stand. That was when I clicked the pen Letty had given me. The recording light blinked once, faint but alive. Her voice came soft and cruel. "He'll never feel it. It's just sleep. Long, clean sleep." Then she replaced the napkin, smoothed her hair, and left the room. I sat in the dark, my heart knocking against the silence like a warning bell. By morning, I had what I needed. Not enough to win, but enough to burn. Letty met me by the vending machines. Her eyes were red from a night shift, but her voice was steady. "Did you get anything?" I handed her the pen. "She spoke," I said. I got the words. She mentioned the IV. Letty exhaled, the kind of breath that sounds like gratitude and fear mixed. "Good. That's our second layer of proof. Audio. The toxicology report will be the third. Will it be enough?" She hesitated. "Maybe. But she's smart. She might sense it before the police arrive. We need to make her feel safe, like she's already won." That was when I understood my role. I wasn't just a mother. I was bait. Scarlett returned at noon, hair fresh, lipstick perfect. She looked rested, almost radiant. The kind of glow that only comes from believing you've erased every trace of guilt. She brought flowers, white lilies. The irony almost made me laugh. "They say lilies purify the air," she said, arranging them beside his bed. He always liked clean scents. "Some smells don't wash off," I murmured. She didn't flinch. Her confidence was armor thick enough to muffle meaning. At one point, she leaned close to me and said softly, "You should really rest, Doris. You look exhausted. All this worry isn't good for you." I met her eyes and smiled. "I've been tired for years, dear. But you know what they say. Old women sleep with one eye open." She blinked, trying to read me. Couldn't. That uncertainty. It was the first time I'd seen her falter. Letty entered just then, professional mask in place. "Mrs. Salazar," she said "Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone." "Scarlett, could you come with me? The billing office needs your signature." Scarlett looked annoyed, but she went. As soon as the door shut, Letty turned to me, lowering her voice. The lab confirmed it. The IV had anticoagulants, same type used in deliberate poisonings. My hands went cold. "So we can call the police?" "They're already on their way," she said. "But you have to keep her in that chair for 20 minutes. No sudden moves, no suspicion. 20 minutes, that's all. I'd waited 66 years to be heard. I could wait 20 more. The next time Scarlett entered, I rose slowly, steadying my breath. "Come, dear," I said, gesturing to the chair beside me. "Let's talk. About family." She smiled, polite but wary. "Of course." "What about it?" "About loyalty," I said, "and how fragile it becomes when money joins the conversation." She laughed lightly. "Oh, Doris, you make everything sound dramatic." "Maybe. Or maybe I've just lived long enough to recognize patterns." Her face stiffened. "What patterns?" "The kind that start with trust and end with signatures." She froze, only for a second, but I saw it. That tiny flash of panic before the mask reforms. I smiled and poured her some coffee. My hand didn't shake. Outside, footsteps echoed, fast, purposeful. The kind of steps that only belong to people wearing badges. I looked at her one last time and said softly, "Do you hear that, Scarlett? That's what truth sounds like when it finally shows up. Every predator studies kindness the way a thief studies floor plans." By afternoon, Scarlett arrived with a new tactic: reconciliation. She came in softer, shoulders rounded, voice dipped in apology. "Doris," she began, setting down a paper bag that smelled faintly of lemon bars. "I've been thinking. We haven't gotten along. That's on me." She looked at my son, my asleep, tethered boy, and let her chin tremble. "He'd want us to be a team. Teams share the ball, thieves share the spoils." I folded the napkin in my lap, slow as prayer. "I'm listening. I know you worry about the house," she said, eyes wet, mouth careful. "If, God forbid, he takes longer to recover, There are forms the hospital suggested, temporary guardianship, just so bills don't pile up. She pulled out a slim folder. No briefcase man this time, just Scarlett in a cardigan, dressed as Reason. I didn't look at the pages. Not yet. They suggested, I repeated. Yes, she said, and the lie purred. I asked about you too. They said we could add you as an alternate. She smiled like mercy. I want you protected. The folder lay between us like a snake. I could feel Letty on the other side of the glass pane at the nurse's station, watching without moving, a lighthouse that refused to blink. That's generous, I said. May I call someone to walk me through it? Scarlett's lashes lowered, then lifted, half a second to re-aim the weapon. Of course, she said brightly. But time matters with these things. We should sign before more delays. I touched the folder. The paper felt warm, as if it had its own pulse. You know, I said, I've always admired your decisiveness. Her mouth softened. Praise is the oldest key in the drawer. I brought something too, I added. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Her attention sharpened. Greed has good hearing. I tipped the pouch into my palm. An old ring, my husband's wedding band, simple gold, worn thin at the bottom where love rubs metal honest. I keep it for decisions, I said. I turn it 3 times when I don't trust my voice. I rolled the ring slowly, 1, 2, letting silence make the room smaller. May I ask a question first? She leaned in, the cardigan's softness announcing a hug that would never come. Anything. Why white lilies? I asked. She blinked. They're pretty. He liked clean. I smiled. They're also funeral flowers. Her eyes cooled, then warmed, then cooled again. Thermostat control of the soul. You're tired, she said. This is grief talking. Perhaps. I turned the ring the 3rd time and slid the folder back to her side. Perhaps grief is the only honest thing in this room. For a breath, she forgot her character. The cardigan fell. The wolf lifted its face. If you want to be difficult, Doris, she murmured, you will make everything harder for him. I let the threat sit, then set a saucer over it like a fly. Then help me, I said gently. Bring me the pills you give him at home, the vitamins. I'll feel better if I know what he's been taking. The faintest smile, like a match struck in a cave. Of course, she said. I'll run home now. She gathered the folder, the lilies, the soft cardigan, every prop, then paused. You'll wait here? I'm very good at waiting. She left. Letty slipped in before the door settled. Did she try to make you sign? She asked. Almost, I said. She's going home. For something we might need. What? Evidence, I said. Or bait. I looked at the clock. Either way, we tighten the net. Letty nodded. Police are staged 2 floors down. We keep her talking when she returns. I touched my son's wrist, counted, here, here, here. The window glass rattled lightly as an elevator cable's groaned to a stop. Letty moved to the door. And then the power hiccuped, lights dimming, monitors stuttering into a thin line of silence no room should ever hear. Scarlett had cut something, or someone had cut it for her. The machines gasped back to life, most of them. One did not, and I understood. This wasn't reconciliation. It was sabotage. Somewhere down the corridor, a code alarm began to wail. Another room, another life, and Letty ran toward it, torn by duty. I stood, alone with my son, listening to a monitor that had chosen this moment to refuse its job. Behind me, the door handle turned. Soft, decisive, as if the hospital itself had decided which team I was on. And I realized we were about to play the next move in the dark. Dark is not the absence of light in hospitals. It's the abundance of fear. When the power staggered and the monitor flatlined into that whispering thread, my heart became a metronome set too fast. Robert, I said, voice steady by force. Stay. I pressed the call button. Nothing. I checked the plug, the line, the sticky pads on his chest. My fingers became a clumsy choir of competence I'd retired a decade ago. The machine refused me. The door opened. Not a nurse. Scarlett. She slipped in on the tail of the confusion, cardigan gone, face bright with fake alarm. "What happened?" she cried, too loud. "What's wrong with him?" "Go get help," I said, already moving to the oxygen, the little I remembered good enough for triage. "Now." "I will," she said, and stepped between me and the IV. I froze. Her hand rested on the line like a lover. "It's loose," she said. "Let me—" "Don't touch him." We stood in that narrow country between two words, wife and mother, a strip of ground soaked with rules and assumptions. She smiled, the kind you give a cashier when your card keeps declining. "You're shaking, Doris. You'll make it worse." "I'm old," I said, and took a step, and she didn't move. The corridor erupted, running feet, a shouted order, the electric whine of a defibrillator somewhere that wasn't here. I understood the tactic then. Chaos as cover. Make every room a question, and this room won't get answered. "I called security," I lied, lifting my chin. "They're outside." Her eyes flicked to the door, calculating. "Why would you do that?" she asked softly. "To keep you safe," I said, and watched the sentence hit her like a wrong note. "From yourself." Her mouth sharpened. "You think I'd hurt him." "I think," I said. "You don't know the difference anymore." She moved first, toward the IV. I blocked with the same body that carried this man into the world. We struggled, quiet, ridiculous, two women fighting over a plastic vein. Then the machine sprang back to life, chirping a weak, obstinate rhythm. We both stilled. The monitor's green line climbed and fell, my son's signature reappearing like a witness late to court. Scarlett stepped back, smoothing her hair as if she hadn't tried to rearrange death. "You're hysterical," she said lightly. "I'll get a nurse." She reached for her purse. The zipper whispered. I saw the amber bottle, saw the neat folded napkin, saw my own reflection in the chrome of the IV pole. An old woman with a steady jaw. "Leave the bag," I said. She laughed. "Don't be absurd." Something inside me went still, the lake of a winter that refuses to crack. "Leave the bag," I repeated, the way I used to say bedtime to a child who mistook kindness for negotiation. For a second, she considered it. Then she smiled, new tactic, and set the purse on the chair, open-mouthed, performatively innocent. "There," she said. "Happy?" "Ecstatic," I said, not touching it. Letty burst in, breathless, cheeks flushed from saving another stranger. "Power's stable," she said, scanning the vitals. "He's okay." Scarlett pasted relief onto her face. "Thank God," she whispered, almost convincing. "I was just going to find you." Letty nodded, too busy with my son to spar. Scarlett edged toward the door. I felt the wind sliding away like a wet plate. "Wait," I said. Both women looked up. "Yes?" Letty asked. "I think," I said carefully, "the lilies are bothering him. Could we take them out? Make some space? The smell. He never liked strong scents." Scarlett's eye twitched. Letty shrugged. "Allergies can irritate," she said, picking up the vase. Water sloshed, catching the light, and something thin and white surfaced and sank again, like a drowned ghost. A folded napkin. Letty's gaze snapped to mine. Scarlett saw it too. The room tilted into that silent moment before glass falls. Then Scarlett moved, a pure animal lunge for the vase. Letty moved faster, setting it down, palm up like a traffic cop. "Step back," she said, professional voice gone steel. Scarlett froze mid-step, recalculating. She smiled. She stepped back. She turned toward the door, harmless, cooperative, free. "Detective Ruiz to ICU," the intercom crackled. "Detective Ruiz to ICU." Scarlett's shoulders flinched, the smallest betrayal. She closed her purse. She lifted it. Empty. When had I? Her eyes darted to me, my hands rested in my lap, the velvet pouch showing like a slow confession. Inside, not my husband's ring. The amber bottle, rattling softly like bones in a pocket. "I believe you dropped this," I said, voice gentle as tea. For the first time, she showed me her real face, naked with fury. She came toward me, not fast, not slow, a blade choosing where to land. And that's when the door opened to a badge and a calm pair of eyes. "Scarlett Fernandez," Detective Ruiz said, stepping in with 2 officers at her shoulders. "We need to talk." Scarlett didn't look at the detective. She looked at me. "You think you've won," she said, almost tender. I folded the velvet pouch closed. "I think I've stopped losing." The officers stepped forward. Scarlett smiled at them like they were ushers at a show. "Of course, Detective," she said, and then, as the nearest nurse spun with a gurney in the hall, she pivoted, slipped between bodies, and ran. The corridor opened for her like a throat. Letty gasped. The officers swore. Detective Ruiz pressed her radio. "East stairwell," she snapped. "Lock it." I stood, legs shaking, sun breathing, heart breaking open to air. We had the bottle, the napkin, the words. We had the IV. We had the truth. But the woman who tried to kill my child had just vanished into a hospital full of places to hide. And somewhere down the east stairwell, a door clicked shut like a promise I wasn't yet strong enough to keep. After she ran, the room felt bigger and emptier at once, like a theater after the curtain falls, air still warm from the bodies that lied on stage. The monitor sang its thin, stubborn hymn. I sat, I breathed, I counted. Here, here, here. Guilt comes in waves, not words. It rolled through me now, thick, salt, old. I thought of birthdays I let slide because his voice on the phone sounded tired. Of dinners where she took his plate before his fork could find seconds. Of the day I signed the house over to make things simple, and how proud he was to be the man in charge. They called me simple. Simple doesn't mean blind. It means I saw and chose peace because I believed love would do the rest. Letty came back with a blanket, the kind they warm in a metal cabinet that clicks like an oven. She tucked it around his legs the way mothers do, and for a second I saw her as a child tucking in a doll, practicing for a life that would demand tenderness and skill in equal measure. "You held the line," she said softly. "You did good." I nodded, which is how old women keep from weeping. She pulled something from her pocket and set it on the tray. A little book, black, elastic band frayed. Nothing special to a thief. "My log," she said. Every time she entered, what she touched, who was in the hall, times, names. I started it the day symptoms stopped matching the chart. She tapped the cover. "It's yours now. Sign your notes under mine." I opened it. Her handwriting leaned forward like it had somewhere to be. 6:47 p.m. Wife alone, 3:12, observed IV contact. 7:12 p.m. Mother arrives, moved to 301 per discretion. Pages and pages of careful attention, the kind that saves a life before anyone agrees a life is in danger. I added my lines, the ones I'd already written in my head. 7:28 p.m. Heard. Once he's unavailable. 11:43 p.m. Powder folded into napkin. Long, clean sleep. The door clicked. A hospital volunteer in a red vest poked her head in, hair white as winter cotton. "Coffee run," she whispered, and set 2 paper cups on the counter. She looked at Robert with the kind of kindness you can't fake. He's got a mama who prays with her feet, I can tell. I smiled. "What's your name, dear?" "Alma," she said. "Been here since they built the north wing. I know the sound of every elevator." She tilted her head, listening. "And that one? East stairwell door? It sticks when it's humid. Needs a shoulder. I heard it twice in the last 10 minutes. Letty's eyes flickered. "Twice?" Alma nodded. "And last night," she added, almost to herself. "I saw your daughter-in-law laughing in the parking lot by the service exit. Not a mean thing to say about laughter, but a woman with a husband on a respirator doesn't laugh like that. She dropped this." From her vest pocket, Alma produced a visitor badge, the adhesive strip dirty with lint. On the back, in tiny print, a barcode and a number. Letty took it like it was a relic. "This assigns doors," she murmured. "If she used it to bypass the nurses' rounds, we'll know exactly where she slipped," I finished. Alma squeezed my arm, papery skin warm. "You want company until the detective comes back?" she asked. "I want witnesses," I said. "And you look like one." She chuckled, low and pleased. "I'll be a witness then." She settled into the corner chair like she'd been sitting in rooms like this her whole life, which she probably had. Some angels wear vests. Between sips of coffee, the guilt rose again, but softer now, like a tide that knows the shore won't run. I failed him, I said quietly, surprising myself by speaking the bruise. Letty shook her head. You raised him. Then she isolated him. That's not failure. That's a tactic. She tapped the logbook. This is your answer. I laid my palm over the cover, felt the warmth the blanket had left there. Evidence isn't just things. It's the heat our hands transfer to them when we decide not to be quiet anymore. Down the corridor, the intercom muttered codes and surnames like a litany. Alma's ear tracked the rhythm, counting without numbers. Letty checked her watch. Detective Ruiz is locking down side exits, she said. We need to be ready when she asks what we have. I closed the log, slid it into my purse behind my husband's ring and the bottle I'd stolen back from the wolf. We have enough to be believed, I said. For once. I stood to stretch, bones talking like old doors. When I turned back to the bed, Robert's eyelids fluttered. Not waking, just the small insistence of a body arguing with sleep. I put 2 fingers on his wrist, breathed with him until our counts matched. Stay, I whispered, mother to infant, prayer to air. Stay, we're almost ready. The east stairwell door groaned again, a stubborn hinge giving way. We weren't the only ones. Detective Ruiz arrived with rain on her shoulders and purpose in her steps. She didn't rush. Women like her learned long ago that speed can look like panic in the wrong light. She closed our door behind her and let the room exhale. Tell me what changed, she said. I handed her the pen recorder first. She weighed it in her palm like a coin and set it down without pressing play. Then the amber bottle in the velvet pouch. Then the napkin, sealed by Letty's gloved hands into a plastic sleeve that made its edges look holy. Lastly, Letty's logbook, our names braided across the lines. Alma cleared her throat and held out the visitor badge number on a sticky note, written with a volunteer's careful pride. Ruiz listened to each offering like a confessor, then opened a thin laptop and began to stitch our truths to timestamps. The badge will give us door pings, she said. Security's pulling the last 48 hours. If she used the east stairwell, we'll see it. She looked at Alma. You'll sign a statement? Sugar, I'll embroider it if you need, Alma said. Ruiz almost smiled. Then she turned to me. Mrs. Salazar, I want your words on the record, in the order you remember them. We'll add them to the log. You understand that once you say them to me, they become evidence. I'm here to be evidence, I said. I don't scream anymore. I document. I spoke, and the room changed shape. Not physically. The bed stayed a bed. The monitor stayed a metronome. But the air grew denser, like rain deciding whether to fall. Ruiz typed, eyes never leaving mine, as if breaking eye contact might let the truth leak out. When I repeated the sentence about long, clean sleep, Letty's jaw tightened. Alma crossed herself in the low, private way older women do when they've seen too much. Ruiz read my statement back to me, measuring each syllable. Do you swear this is accurate? I swear it's what I heard, I said. And I swear I heard it with the ears of a mother who wished she hadn't. She marked a time, signed, slid the laptop aside. Good, she said. And in that small word was the first shift of weight from us to her, from story to case. Now we go get her. The intercom crackled. A voice from security came through her radio. Ruiz, we've got badge pings for visitor 8163. East stairwell at 1912 and 1914, service corridor at 1916, pharmacy annex at 1922, no exit swipe. Pharmacy, Letty repeated, eyes closing once like a wish. Of course. Lock the annex, Ruiz said into her radio. 2 officers at the service corridor. No uniforms near the pharmacy window. She spooks easy. She turned to me. You've done enough, she said gently. Stay with him. Enough. The word used to sound like surrender. Tonight it sounded like rank. Detective, I said. If she comes back, she won't, Ruiz said, checking the slide on her holster the way a pianist checks middle C. She thinks the stairwells make her invisible. Predators love corners. They forget corners meet. When she left, the room rewound itself to the old rhythm. beeps and breaths, the faint citrus of lilies banished now to a biohazard bin. I sat. I let the quiet braid with the fear and make something usable. Resolve. In the chair, Alma unfolded a crochet hook from her bag as if she'd been invited to a parlor instead of a crime scene. I make blankets for the hospice wing, she said, looping yarn like a rosary. Helps the hands do something kind while the mind sits with sorrow. She looked up over her glasses. You want to learn? I used to, I said. When Robert was little, I made a yellow scarf that unraveled every time he wore it because I tied the knots too soft. Soft isn't wrong, she said. Soft just needs practice. I watched her hands, the quiet economy. Lady slipped out and back in with fresh charts. She moved like someone who refuses to let chaos tell her who she is. My son slept. The monitor agreed. The radio on the counter clicked once, then spoke in the calm that means the next sentence matters. Ruiz to ICU. Copy. Visual on subject in pharmacy corridor. Copy. Subject entering. Negative. Subject doubled back. East alcove. Alma's hook paused mid-stitch. Letty's pen stopped in its loop. Copy, Ruiz answered. Do not engage. Eyes only. I stood and went to the window, not because I could see the pharmacy corridor from here. Of course I couldn't, but because sometimes the body needs to look toward the danger to remind the heart it's brave. My reflection looked back. Older, yes. Softened in some places, sharpened in others. A woman with a ring in her purse and a ledger in her hands. A woman who chose not to be quiet. The radio crackled again. Subject at alcove door. Copy. Badge ping. Copy. Door open. Open. I pressed my palm to the glass to steady the tremor. In the reflection, a figure eased down our corridor, far end. Just a shape, then heels, then the angle of a jaw I had set places for at my table. She moved carefully, eyes scanning, clever as always. Letty, I whispered. She followed my gaze and inhaled, barely a sound. She's looping back, Letty said. She wants to clear the room before she tries the exit. Alma set her yarn aside and rose, bones creaking like honest floorboards. She stepped to my side, not between me and the door, beside me. Women like us don't make walls. We make lines that hold. Letty slid toward the call button, thumb ready. Scarlett paused, 20 yards out. Her eyes found our door and evaluated its math. 2 old women, 1 nurse, 1 sleeping man, 1 file she hadn't seen me take. The corridor held its breath. I felt the weight of the logbook in my purse, the square of the recorder, the circle of my husband's ring. Outside, somewhere we couldn't see, a badge met a lock, and the hinge began to turn. Power isn't loud. It's patient. It counts. It writes. It waits for the exact second when truth and timing finally touch. She stopped outside our doorway like a question. Letty's thumb hovered above the call button. Alma stood beside me, a small, sturdy lighthouse in a red vest. I felt the weight of the logbook in my purse and the circle of my husband's ring pressing through the fabric like a reminder. Choose and don't apologize. Scarlett stepped in with the confidence of someone who believes the room belongs to her. How is he? She asked, not looking at Robert. Her eyes swept the surfaces, the tray, the counter, the missing lilies, the absence that told on her more than any presence could. Resting, I said. The doctor adjusted his medications. A little truth wrapped around a larger one. She smiled at Alma, as if volunteers grow on trees. Thank you for everything. Alma nodded, knitting in her hands again. A domestic camouflage for the kind of attention predators always underestimate. Lady updated the chart with neat motions, voice calm. Vitals are stable, she said. We're keeping interruptions to a minimum. Of course, Scarlett said, and took a single step toward the bed. She wanted to touch the IV again, to finish the sentence she had started before the hospital hiccuped. Her fingertips hovered, indecisive moths. That line is secure, Letty said, not looking up. Hands off, please. Scarlett's smile held. Just fixing the blanket. Then fix the blanket, Letty said, pen tapping once against paper. A metronome for boundaries. Scarlett smoothed fabric that didn't need smoothing. She could feel something had shifted, but she didn't know where the floor had moved. That's the quiet math of inversion, moving a wall 2 inches while your enemy blinks. I poured water into a paper cup and set it near her hand. "You look thirsty," I said. "Grief dries the mouth." She took the cup, then set it down untouched. "I'm fine." "Of course," I said, then added, as if it had just occurred to me. "The billing office called. They mentioned a guardianship form. Sensible, I suppose, with all these delays." Very gently, I placed her bait back on the hook. She couldn't resist checking if the fish still circled. "It would streamline decisions," she said. "Hospitals need signatures. Somebody has to sign." "True," I said. "But I've found signatures mean more when the signer understands what she's signing." Her eyes narrowed a fraction. "Are you implying—" "I'm implying nothing," I said, smiling. "I am collecting." Her gaze flicked to my purse. Not long enough to accuse, just long enough to confess that she feared what might be inside. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and heat from the blanket warmer. The monitor kept its terse lullaby. Outside, a cart squeaked. Far away, a baby cried. The hospital breathed in and out, indifferent to our private war. "Mrs. Salazar," Letty said to me, tone perfectly neutral. "Housekeeping asked about the vase. I told them it was disposed of." "Good," I said. It made him cough. A small sentence, but I watched it land. Scarlett blinked once. The napkin hadn't stayed drowned. Ruiz's voice arrived over the radio. A brief update to someone at security, all verbs and coordinates. Scarlett heard it too. She folded her arms like a woman cold in a hot room. "I'm going to get some air," she said. "Take your time," I answered. "We'll be here." The promise sounded like hospitality. It wasn't. She left. Letty exhaled. Alma's hook resumed its quiet click. "Now what?" Letty asked. "Now we place the furniture where we want it," I said, "and we don't move again." I took out the ring, turned it once, twice, a third time, slow. Then I slid it onto the chain around my neck, next to a tiny locket with a curl of Robert's baby hair. I wasn't arming myself. I was remembering who I was. "Detective wants her calm," Letty said, reading the text that lit up her pager. "No chase in the hallways. Trap her with her own steps." "Then we give her a room," I said, looking at the vacant family lounge across the corridor, its lamp throwing a soft circle of light on an empty couch. "Doors that open inward are good for conversations." Alma smiled without showing teeth. "I'll save the couch," she said, and shuffled across, settling like a queen in a borrowed parlor. I kissed Robert's temple, cool, damp, purposeful. "Stay," I whispered to skin and soul. "Your mother is going to tidy up a mess." When Scarlett returned, I stood in the doorway, not blocking, not inviting, just present. "He'll sleep a while," I said. "There's a comfortable chair across the way." She followed my glance. Cats follow the red dot even when they know better. 10 minutes, she said, gliding into the lounge. "Then I need to make a call." "Of course," I said, stepping in behind her. I let the door swing most of the way closed. Not a trap, just a frame. Power had changed hands hours ago. This was the first moment she could feel it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't point. I didn't accuse. I placed my purse on the table and opened the logbook to a fresh page. "Date," I said, and wrote it. "Time." I wrote that too. Then I looked up and began. "Let me tell you what I've heard," I said, "and you tell me if I got it wrong." The door breathed against its hinges. The hospital kept humming. The pen waited above the line, and for the first time, she didn't smile. We sat across from each other like women at a church tea, foam cups, soft lighting, a painting of a forgettable landscape. The carpet had that geometric pattern that hides stains, and the clock on the wall clicked without apology. Everything was gentle except the truth between us. I laid the recorder on the table. I did not press play. "You said, 'long, clean sleep,'" I began, voice even. That's a phrase I wish I could forget. She stared at the pen, not the recorder. Predators always track the tool that threatens them most, the one that turns sound into sentences. "You're confused," she said. "I am not confused," I said. "I am older than your tactics." A flare of annoyance, then charm again. "Doris, Grief changes how we hear. You think you heard something terrible. You didn't. Tell me what I heard then, I said, and lifted the pen. Her eyes slid to the door and back, measuring distance, angles, my age, her odds. You're making a mistake. The police will laugh if you present a story with no context. I'm not presenting a story, I said. I'm presenting a pattern. I tapped the open log. This is context. She leaned back, and for a second I saw the spine of her, steel wrapped in silk. Let's be practical. He will recover or he won't. If he does, wonderful. If he doesn't, life goes on. Houses need owners, businesses need managers. I'm the wife, and I'm the mother, I said. But do you know what I am most in this moment? I am the historian. I write what happened. And I am the future, she said softly. I sign what will be. We held each other's gaze over that little table while the hospital moved around us like weather. Somewhere, a nurse laughed. Somewhere, a machine alarmed and was soothed. In here, the temperature dropped. You could have had me, I said. You could have had a mother who wanted to love you. You chose paper instead. She shrugged, a small, elegant lift. People choose what feeds them. Then this will not feed you, I said, and slid the velvet pouch across the table. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. We both knew what was inside. You stole from me, she said. I smiled. I retrieved what I paid for. She tilted her head. You think police will prefer a mother's memory to a wife's signature? I think they'll prefer the truth when it wears 4 layers, I said, counting on my fingers. Toxicology, audio, video, and your habit of using the same bad luck in every city you visit. The detective is already stitching the towns into a quilt. Her pupils widened. The first honest reaction. Then she breathed it away. Suppose, for a second, I did say something careless. Suppose you did find something you think is mine. None of that proves intent. You're right, I said gently. So let me offer you the smallest courtesy left between us. Let me give you a chance to say a sentence I will write down exactly as you say it. I lifted the pen again, poised above the line. What sentence is that? Her voice had a new texture now, not fear, not yet. Wariness that sensed the edge of a cliff. A sentence only you can say, I answered. Because only you gave him orange juice every morning, and only you knew the brand you bought on sale last week when the store substituted a different bottle. You didn't notice the change in the cap. The detective did. A flicker, tiny, unhideable. Every liar has a blind spot. Hers was the shelf label. The cap? She repeated. The cap, I said. On the juice. The old brand snapped. The new brand twists. You told the lawyer you gave him crushed pills in his orange juice. The recorder has your breath on that sentence. But when you described twisting yesterday, you mimed a snap. I made the motion. Twist, not pop. And let the silence widen between the two shapes our hands made. In the hall, a cart rolled past and squeaked at the seam where 2 carpets met, a sound I will hear when I am 90. She tried to reconcile physics and memory, and found the gap where truth lives. You weren't there yesterday morning, I finished softly. And you weren't there the morning before, because the neighbor's door camera saw him leaving alone, pale, late, clutching his stomach. You drugged him before those days. You were already practicing sleep. Her throat worked. She glanced at the clock. She measured windows that would not open. She calculated how many rooms between here and the east stairwell and found 1 too many. You can't prove, she began. The door opened a fraction. Letty set 2 fresh foam cups inside and left without a word. The smell of coffee entered, warm as a hand. I pushed 1 cup toward Scarlett. Drink, I said. Your mouth is dry. She didn't. She stared at the cup like it might confess. She swallowed nothing. I put the pen down, folded my hands, and gave her my last kindness. Listen to me. Men like yours do not ruin women like me anymore. You are not the first sentence of my day or the last. This room is the only room where I will ever speak to you in private. After this, everything moves to paper. For a heartbeat, I thought she might cry. Not from guilt, from the bitterness of discovering the audience is not who she thought. Then she stood, smooth and slow, and placed her palms on the table. You've made yourself very important, she said, Enjoy it. I don't enjoy anything about this, I said, but I am satisfied. She moved toward the door. I didn't stop her. The detective would. The net is kindest when the fish swims into it, thinking it chose the current. Hand on the handle, she paused and turned. When he wakes up, she said, he will believe me. I shook my head, and I didn't whisper now. No, when he wakes up, he will believe himself, and you cannot live there. She opened the door. Detective Ruiz stood in the frame, one palm on the jamb, the other ready. Behind her, 2 officers waited. Not aggressive, not gentle, simply present. Ms. Fernandez, Ruiz said, voice soft as a page turning. We're going to finish our conversation in a room with better lighting. Scarlett looked past her to the corridor, weighing gambles that used to pay. Then she made the smallest bow I have ever seen. Not respect, recognition. Predators know when the forest changes hands. She stepped into the hall. The officers closed the circle. Ruiz met my eyes over Scarlett's shoulder, a question and an answer at once. We're done here? I asked. We're ready, she said. She led Scarlett away. The door eased shut. The clock clicked. The hospital breathed. I picked up the pen and wrote one last line in Letty's log. 11:06 p.m. She stopped smiling. Hospitals are built to keep secrets, curtains, codes, closed doors. But there's a moment when privacy surrenders to consequence. It happens under fluorescent lights with the volume turned down. Everyone hears it anyway. They chose the conference room off ICU, glass walls, a long table, the hum of an overworked vent. Inside sat Detective Ruiz, a hospital administrator with a tie that apologized for being there, a risk officer, and 2 nurses who smelled like coffee and resolve. Letty stood at the end of the table with her logbook open, a general whose army wore scrubs. Scarlett was escorted in, not dragged, not paraded, just placed in a chair where sunlight could find the truth in her face. She crossed her ankles delicately. Predators perform grace until the last cue. Ruiz began without ceremony. We're recording, she said. This is to preserve the facts. The red light blinked. The room exhaled. First, the video clips. Security timestamps, still frames of a cream dress at the IV pole, a hand, careful as a thief, pinching a clear tube, 3 visits alone when no nurse was nearby. Then the toxicology report, words that sound clean and mean death, anticoagulant, elevated INR, exogenous source. Letty read from her notes, date, time, entry, exit. She didn't dramatize. She didn't need to. The ink did the heavy lifting. Mrs. Salazar? Ruiz said, turning to me finally. My hands lay folded, the ring warm against my skin. Would you like to add anything? I set the pen recorder on the table and pressed play. My daughter-in-law's voice entered the room like a draft. He'll never feel it. It's just sleep. Long, clean sleep. The risk officer's jaw twitched. The administrator cleared his throat into a fist. Scarlett didn't look at the device. She looked at me and found no place to land. The hospital administrator spoke next, voice steady because policies have spines. For the record, the hospital is cooperating with law enforcement. We'll initiate an internal review of access, badges, and pharmacy controls. He glanced at Scarlett as if she were a misfiled form. Effective immediately, your visiting privileges are revoked. Scarlett smiled a fraction. You can't keep a wife from her husband. Ma'am, the risk officer said, almost kind. We're keeping a suspect from a patient. Ruiz slid a paper across the table. Here's the part where consequences stop being theoretical. She read the charges, each syllable a small door closing. Attempted murder, aggravated assault, fraud, evidence tampering. You'll be transported for processing after medical clearance. Scarlett's gaze flicked to the hallway where the ICU lived, to the glass where a reflection gave her nothing useful. He will defend me, she said softly. He always does. Not today, I answered, and felt the sentence seat itself in my bones. Today, evidence does. She turned to Ruiz, changed tactics midstream. I want my lawyer. You already had one, Ruiz said evenly. He's cooperating. For a heartbeat, Scarlett's mask split, hairline fracture no camera could miss. She reassembled it with practice and poison. "This is a misunderstanding," she tried. "Doctors make mistakes. Nurses misremember. Old women panic. Play that recording in court and see how they laugh." "We will," Ruiz said. "They won't." 2 officers stepped closer. Not rough, not triumphant. Just inevitable. Scarlett stood, smoothing the crease of a dress that would never matter again. Handcuffs clicked like a prayer bead. She didn't look at me when they turned her toward the door. Predators prefer forward. The conference room watched her go, the way a field watches a storm recede. Quiet, relieved, aware that damage has already been done. Ruiz gathered the evidence with the care of someone packing a suitcase for a place called Justice. "We'll update you as soon as she's processed," she said. "In the meantime," the administrator added, "we'll assign extra security to room 312. I nodded, felt older and taller at once. "Thank you," I said to the nurses, to the volunteer in the doorway, to the woman in me, who didn't leave when it got hard. We filed into the hall. The ICU had gone back to its alphabet of beeps. I went to my son's room, pressed my palm to his, and counted. Here, here, here. Down the corridor, the elevator doors opened with a sigh. Metal met metal. Footsteps faded. I breathed out a lifetime of almosts. And then, from the threshold, Ruiz's voice. "Mrs. Salazar, one more thing." I turned. She held up a manila folder, the kind that changes futures. "Financial Crimes found something you should see," she said. "It's about the house." The folder was heavy with paper and light with air, the way relief arrives after a long winter. We sat by the window of 312 while afternoon slid gold along the floor. Ruiz laid the documents across the tray table as if setting a table for truth. Her lawyer initiated transfers, Ruiz said. But he also emailed himself drafts, sloppy, time-stamped, traced to his office. He's bargaining. We seized his laptop this morning. Letty leaned in, eyes catching lines like a net, forged signatures that looked almost like Robert's, a notary stamp duplicated like a rubber sole, a temporary guardianship form that would have turned my son into a wallet with a pulse. "Accounts are frozen," Ruiz continued. "The house title remains in Robert's name. The court granted an emergency protective order over all assets, and her alias, Karen Fields, pulled warrants in 2 states before lunch." I thought of holidays at that dining table, of chairs I set for a woman who cataloged our silver while I washed dishes. "What happens to her?" I asked, not hungry for vengeance, just accuracy. "Tomorrow," Ruiz said. "Arraignment. Judge will likely deny bail due to risk of flight and pattern of fraud. Her public defender will advise a plea. With the recording and the toxicology, she's cornered. Cornered. Not caged yet." I looked at my son and placed my thumb over the blue map of veins at his wrist. He stirred, a tiny contract renewed. A soft knock. Alma entered with a bouquet that understood humility. Daisies, 2 sunflowers, nothing funereal. "From the waiting room, ladies," she said, setting them far from the IV. "We send brightness where gloom tried to settle." "Thank you," I whispered. Alma looked at the folder, then at me. "You should eat," she scolded gently. "Justice is long work. It needs calories." I smiled. "I'll eat when he opens his eyes." "Stubborn," she said, pleased. Evening gathered at the edges of the windows. The hospital shifted into its night language. Softer shoes, dimmer lights, the steady patience of people who do their best work after visiting hours. I stood, stretched, let my spine count its own years, and felt something unclench that had been knotted since the phone rang over a pot of soup. From the door, low voices, 2 orderlies and a police officer. Then a hush, the kind that ripples outward when news enters a place. Letty stepped in, eyes bright with something more than tired. "Processing is complete," she said. They walked her out through the service elevator. No cameras, but plenty of witnesses. She tried to keep her head high. "And?" I asked. And then the elevator stuck between floors. Letty's mouth almost smiled. Maintenance had to work the crank. 10 minutes in a box with mirrors and handcuffs. Not much, but some consequences should echo. I sat, surprised by the softness of what I felt. Not triumph. Closure's first draft. Ruiz returned once more, a final paper in hand. The judge's order stamped clean. "You're protected," she said. "So is he. And financial crimes will request restitution against whatever she owns that isn't paper thin." "What does she own?" I asked. Ruiz's eyebrows made a small, wry bridge. "A closet of dresses and 3 aliases. Everything else was borrowed and promised." The nurse checked Robert's vitals. The monitor answered with a rhythm that felt less like a plea and more like a plan. Outside, night settled its cool palm on the hospital roof. I reached into my purse and found the ring chain. I turned the band once, twice, not for a decision now, but for gratitude. "At my age," I said, half to Letty, half to the dark, "I don't shout, I keep receipts." "Keep one more," Ruiz said, tapping the folder. "You'll want it for the day he asks how we got here." "How we got out," I corrected, and the word fit. As they left, the room exhaled to a smaller, kinder silence. I pulled my chair close and laid my head near my son's hand. The skin was warmer than this morning. The air smelled like daisies and disinfectant. 2 truths can live together. Somewhere deep in the building, a door latched with a final, satisfying click, metal deciding to meet metal and hold. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was the jail intake downtown. Maybe it was the sound of a life-changing places. I closed my eyes for the first time in 2 days, and just as sleep found me, his fingers tightened, once, deliberate, as if to say, "I'm coming back." "Keep the light on." Morning found us like an answered letter, creased, handled, finally read. The sun pushed a thin blade through the blinds, turned the room from pewter to pale gold. Vitals, stable. INR, falling. Oxygen, lower now, more dignity than dependence. Letty adjusted the drip and smiled with her eyes. "He's ready to try," she said. I took his hand. "Robert?" The name felt both brand new and ancient. His eyelids trembled, then lifted. Confusion first, then focus, then me. Recognized, accepted, kept. "Mom," he rasped. I hadn't planned to cry. I cried anyway. "I'm here." Pieces arrived out of order. His office, the pain, the brightness, nothing. He blinked at the window, at the daisies, at the empty space where lilies used to pretend to be mercy. His mouth shaped a question he wasn't ready to ask. "Later," I said. "You just breathe." He nodded, and even that small consent felt like a treaty signed in soft ink. When Letty stepped out, he looked at me again, shame crossing his face like a cloud. If I said things, if I haven't been..." "We'll count forward," I said. "Start at today." He swallowed. "Is she..." "Handled," I answered. "By paper." He closed his eyes and let out a breath that belonged to a child I once held through a storm. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for the years I let someone else narrate us." "I'm sorry," I said, "for the years I mistook silence for peace." We stayed with the truth long enough to make it ours. When Detective Ruiz came by, she stood at the foot of the bed and reported with the crisp kindness of a surgeon removing a splinter. "Charges filed. Bail denied. You're both safe." She nodded at me. "You did good." After she left, practical things lined up like chairs, passwords reclaimed, autopay paused, a spare key returned to me from a drawer where it had hidden under receipts for wine I didn't drink. I placed the key on my palm and weighed it. Not metal, boundary. "About the house," Robert said, voice steadier now. "We'll move. Fresh walls. No ghosts. You'll choose the curtains." "I like light," I said. "Then we'll have light," he answered. He drifted to sleep as afternoon softened, and I drifted through memories that no longer hurt like they used to. Alma peeked in with a plastic container. "Your soup," she announced. "They saved the pot." I laughed, surprised by the sound. The first spoonful tasted like a kitchen I'd left running, in this life and the next. When Robert woke again, he watched me eat as if the rhythm of my jaw could set the room's metronome. "We'll put your name on the business," he murmured. "On the house. On the account. Not because you need it to matter, because it tells the truth." "It will tell the truth," I agreed. "And truth likes paperwork." Evening crept in. Letty dimmed the lights. The monitor clicked its patient syllables. I kissed my son's forehead and sat back, the ring warm against my skin, the logbook heavy and right in my purse. We had been spared without spectacle. Justice was a form, a knock, a signature. I didn't want fire. I wanted edges that fit. I looked at the empty space where fear had lived and realized it had moved out, left the key and everything. I turned the ring once, not to decide, but to mark the moment. And then a shadow passed the door, paused, and stepped in, a figure I half expected and feared I'd never see. He wore a suit that had seen better meetings, hair neat, eyes careful. The lawyer with the briefcase, now without either. He removed his hat like a man approaching a graveside and stood just inside the line that separates hallway from home. "Mrs. Salazar," he said. "Mr. Salazar, I'm here to apologize." Robert's hand tightened around mine, weak but willing. I lifted my chin. "Name." "Mark Delgado," he said, and did not offer the rest of his practiced biography. I gave her forms. I knew what she wanted them for. I told myself I was just a pen. I was not. Alma materialized in the doorway, as volunteers do when doors open to consequence. Letty stood beside her, arms folded, the way women fold laundry when they're deciding whether to keep anything. Mark looked smaller under their eyes. "I'm cooperating," he said, "with Detective Ruiz, with the court, with my conscience, late as it is. I brought copies of emails, timestamps, drafts. I can testify to intent. It won't erase my part, but maybe it will shorten yours." I watched his mouth as he spoke and saw the first honest thing it had said in months. "Why here?" I asked. "Because this is where the harm was concentrated," he answered, "and because I wanted to see the person who fought me without seeing me." "I didn't fight you," I said, and his brow creased. "I wrote you down." He nodded once, understanding the difference. He placed an envelope on the tray and stepped back. "For restitution," he said, "from my retainer. It's not enough. It doesn't have to be accepted. It just has to be offered." Robert looked at me. I looked at Letty. Letty looked at Alma. Alma looked at the ceiling as if the paint might weigh in. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy with the smallest kind of right. "We'll let the court sort money," I said, returning it to the tray. "You sort your soul." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." He left. The room breathed. Letty exhaled. Alma clicked her tongue. "Men with briefcases," she said, "should carry brooms after." "We all should," I said. Night settled. Not a threat, not a trial, just a blanket tucked by a nurse who knows how to tuck blankets. Robert slept. I opened my purse and took out the logbook. On the last page, beneath Letty's neat final entry, I wrote one line with my good pen. "Release is not forgetting. It is filing in the right drawer and closing it gently." 2 weeks later, discharge day arrived draped in normal clothes. Papers signed, prescriptions explained, follow-up dates circled like islands on a calendar sea. We left through the main doors, not the side, not the service. Alma waved her red vest like a flag. Letty hugged me, a careful squeeze around bones and history. Detective Ruiz tipped her chin. That quiet kind of salute women give each other when there's nothing left to say that counts as more than the work already done. Outside, the air was the kind that forgives, bright, a little cool, smelling faintly of pavement and coffee. A city kept moving while we learned to stand. We did not go back to the old house. We took the bus, then a cab, then a key from a realtor who knew how to listen. The new place had light like a promise. I hung the ring on the window latch where morning could touch it. I set the logbook in a drawer labeled with a word I never thought I'd love: records. I boiled soup and let it simmer without fear. The phone rang. Friends, cousins, the world resuming its neighborhood. We answered what we wanted and let the rest leave messages for a later that might never come. At dusk, Robert stood at the window, haloed by whatever grace comes to men who have seen the inside of sleep and decided to wake. "Thank you," he said, "for not shouting." "I did more than that," I said, smiling. I wrote. We watched the streetlights blink on, one by one, a city learning to glow after everything. When he reached for my hand, I let him hold it, and for once, I didn't count. I didn't need proof. I'm 66. I keep receipts. I do not collect revenge. I collect outcomes. If stories like this help you breathe, You know where to find me. I don't scream anymore. I document. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.